As I mentioned, we're talking about these three words, everything in common, and those three words are found in Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47. They're printed at the bottom of page 10. I'd like to read them right away as we get into it today. It says, "They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship, to the breaking of bread and to prayer." The they here, these people who are devoting themselves, are the new group of believers who resulted from Pentecost. So there was this very significant day called Pentecost. You celebrated it here at Calvary a few weeks ago. And on that day, God poured out his Holy Spirit on the people of Jerusalem in a really remarkable way, so that the 12 apostles who had followed Jesus, or the 11 apostles who had followed Jesus around, were able to speak in such a way that every person around them, no matter what language they spoke, could understand them. It was an incredible miracle. It was wild. Everybody was able to understand the apostles, and they had these sort of tongues of fire, these flames that it seemed like were on their heads to show that they were doing something really special. And on that day, 3,000 people became Christians, listened to the apostles, and believed what they were saying about Jesus and who he was. Just to give you perspective on that day, there were probably at most 120 people in Jerusalem who would have said at the beginning of that day, "I believe in Jesus," or "Jesus is important to me." By the end of that day, there were 3,000 people who would say that. I have been a missionary planting churches my whole ministry. This day is a dream. It's an incredible thing what happened on Pentecost. And these people who came out of that day, they did something remarkable. What we have here, as we continue reading from Acts chapter 2, is a description of how they carried themselves together. They devoted themselves to the apostles' teaching and to fellowship and to the breaking of bread, which is communion, but it's not just communion, it's eating together and being together, and to prayer. Everyone was filled with awe at the many wonders and signs that were performed by the apostles. All of the believers were together and had everything in common. They sold property and possessions to give to anyone who had need. Every day, they continued to meet together in the temple courts. They broke bread in their homes and ate together with glad and sincere hearts, praising God and enjoying the favor of all the people. And the Lord added to their number daily those who were being saved. It's a remarkable description of a family of believers together and living together and figuring out what it looks like to be a family of believers together and the ways that the Lord pours out blessing on that family. It's beautiful. And I really want us to spend some time thinking about that beautiful picture that we have in these verses. These are some dream verses to me. This is the kind of stuff God dreamt about when he made the world, the kind of stuff God dreamt about as he walked around and did his ministry for the years that he was on earth. This is a version, an encapsulation of God's dream for his people. And I want you to catch that dream today. I want you to dream it with him. And to help you do that, I wrote some poetic lines. They're in the bigger text that's up there above. I'm going to refer back to these words a few times, and I'd like you to read them with me every time I come back to them. So let's do it once now. We'll read these words out loud together. It's your first time at it, so it's okay. Just follow me. Here we go. All dreams begin as dreams because that's where you can see them. But dreams come true are different, because there you have to be them. Still, in some fleeting moments, the two can coexist. The dream unchanged can come to life. The good that could be is. My friends, believe with me in dreams that do come true, and seek to see them in the midst of God and me and you. God's dream didn't start in Acts chapter 2. I think Luke, who wrote the book of Acts, was aware that it was kind of coming true in a way in Acts chapter 2. This is really excited writing. Do you notice how many times like the word every and all were in here? These superlative statements just cascading over each other because it was really an excited thing. Another biblical author who had that kind of thing going with his language was Moses, as he wrote the first 5 books of the Old Testament and as he wrote the book of Genesis, and he described what God was making. He really wrote it in a poetic way that was meant to highlight and emphasize how cool the thing God made was. How significantly beautiful the idea that God brought to life in the creation of the universe really was. And as he lays this out, he does paint a picture that is pretty remarkable. I know that you and I don't live in the Garden of Eden. We don't live in a place that looks like that. But if you can imagine what this was like for Adam and Eve when they were in the garden, what this was like for Adam and Eve when they would wake up in the morning in a perfect place. And it wasn't like they didn't have things to do. There were trees to take care of, fruits to eat, paths to walk on through the garden. But they were in a place where while you did that, every once in a while, you'd come around a corner and you know who would be there enjoying the garden? Not your spouse, but God himself would be there in the garden, walking in the garden of the cool of the day as it seems he did. That had to be incredible. You get to the end of a day and the sun starts to go down and you're lying down somewhere with a little clearing and you're watching the stars come out and you look to your side and you realize, oh, God's lying here with us. Let's ask him about what he was doing while he was making these stars, what his thoughts were about what they should be. It's amazing. Everything about it works and clicks and they're together and they enjoy it. And we don't know how long Adam and Eve got to spend in the garden. A lot of biblical scholars suggest it wasn't that long, because you kind of maybe would think that they would have had a baby at some point. But maybe, if you're not aging, you don't hurry up so much to try to think about building a family, and you spend a little more. I don't know how long. I just want them to spend more time in it. I want Adam and Eve to have spent lots and lots of days enjoying the wonderfulness of the Garden of Eden and the dream that God had delivered to them. But the problem is, no matter how long I let them be there, it's going to come to an end. It's going to break apart. Adam and Eve are going to reach for something that isn't theirs. And they're going to learn a really important lesson about paradise when they do. When Adam and Eve eat the fruit in the Garden of Eden, as they are tempted by the devil to do so, they learn something about paradise that I think we in general still are learning. We are still struggling to have and to understand a key truth to how paradise works in God's paradigm that's just really tough for human beings to grab hold of. The reality is this. In paradise, you, singular, don't have everything. It's not how paradise works. I think in an American ideal or in a consumeristic ideal, we think, I will be the happiest when I have as much as possible. I will be the happiest when I have personally access to every possible thing. This is the sort of lie the devil feeds us. If you don't have it, then you can't possibly be happy. You need to have it. It needs to be yours. He does this in another way too, when he says to you that what you do have is yours and it belongs to you, right? Like these two very possessive ideas, this is mine and what I have is that which can possibly satisfy me or bring me paradise, are these lies the devil tells us. The reality was in paradise, Adam and Eve didn't have everything. There's a whole tree that wasn't theirs. It wasn't for them. They weren't supposed to have it. In paradise, you don't have everything. In fact, they should have known that already, frankly, because Adam didn't have one of his ribs. When God made Eve, he took one of the ribs to make Eve. And he made a person that had stuff that was different than what he had. And Eve should have known because there's another person that had stuff that was different than what she had. In paradise, you, singular, don't have everything. And as long as you, singular, think you can't be happy until you have everything, you, singular, will not be in paradise. It's not how it works. It's not how it's designed. There's a different system, a different way of programming things that it's supposed to work. It's what we see in Acts chapter 2, particularly in verse 44, where it says, all the believers were together and had everything in common. Read the poem with me again. All dreams begin as dreams because that's where you can see them. But dreams come true are different because there you have to be them. Still, in some fleeting moments, the two can coexist. The dream unchanged can come to life. The good that could be is. My friends, believe with me in dreams that do come true, and seek to see them in the midst of God and me and you. All the believers were together, and they had everything in common. If you think critically about that phrase, everything in common, you come to a conclusion pretty quickly that it can't mean one thing. There's one thing that when you say people have something in common, you think about, like you both have blue eyes, or you both have brown hair, or you're both 6 feet tall, or you're both fans of some sports team, whatever it is, you have that in common. That's not what's going on here. They didn't all wear the same clothes. They didn't all have Green Bay Packer ties. They didn't all have common features or common likes and dislikes. They didn't even have common needs. They were very different people. They spoke different languages. Remember what happened on Pentecost? God gave the apostles the ability to speak in a way that people of different cultural backgrounds, linguistic backgrounds, would all come together around one singular message of the love of God poured out in the blood of Jesus Christ that redeemed them from their sins. This is the only thing that these people actually had in common. They were all excited about this Jesus idea. Everything else was different. So how did they have everything in common? I mentioned before that this is not 3 words in Greek, it's just 2 words in the Greek. And the 2 words that are translated everything in common are pantos, koinonia. The first one, pantos, is one that you're actually very, like way too familiar with. You know this pan, P-A-N-T-O-S, pan word way too well, because we all just went through a pandemic. A thing where all of the world had the same problem, where there was this disease that everybody was dealing with, and the consequences of it that everyone was dealing with. That's what that means. All, every, each, the whole, pan. And then the second word is koinonia. Maybe some of you have heard of, there's a band called Koine. Their name is the same word as that. It's a word that means common. It's a word that means communal, a word that means community. So they had everything in their community. They had everything when they were in common. When together they had it. It wasn't that you singular had everything, it was that you plural have everything when you are together. This is God's dream. This is God's paradise. Luke gets excited about it because it's a remarkable moment of the dream come true. Everyone has everything because they have it together in their community. And how did they show that to be true? In the next verse it says very clearly, they would sell property. They would sell their stuff to give to those who have need. They had everything in common because they were aware of what each other had and what each other didn't have. They shared their needs with each other. They were so vulnerably connected to each other that they felt safe and comfortable in this community saying, I am struggling in this way, I have a need. Be it economic need, be it emotional need, be it whatever version of a need you can make up or you have right now. They were able to say in their community, I have this need, and I believe that you, my community of people, can help me fill in that need. And they did together. Together, they had everything in common. It is the scariest dream that I think can be dreamt. Because they did this in this world. They did this in this broken, sin-filled place where people are very selfish And you know what happens? You get ripped off. You don't have to read very much further in the book of Acts to see this kind of break apart, in fact. You just go to Acts chapter 6, just a few more chapters from here, and you're going to see a situation arise where, as they were collectively bringing their food together to be distributed to those who had need, a few of the widows who were supposed to be receiving food were getting skipped over in the distribution because they were Greeks. They weren't Jewish, and so they weren't getting the preferential treatment that the Jewish widows were getting. This is this post-Pentecost community. It doesn't take long for it to fall apart. It doesn't take long for a person who thought that they had faith in this idea, who thought that they could dream this dream and come with open hands because they have need and admit that they have need, to be turned away with no bread in their hands and to become very embittered toward that dream and the promises that it had made. But man, when the dream is really happening, it's so beautiful. They did that on this planet. They did that in this sinful place. All the believers were together, and they had everything in common. And it's easy for me to sit down and look at Acts chapter 2, verses 42 through 47, and then compare it to what I see going on in the Christian church in America, what I see going on in Christian churches in Seattle, what I see going on in Christian churches in the Wisconsin Synod, and think, man, we aren't there. We aren't doing this. We're not dreaming the dream. But you guys don't exactly come to church on a Sunday morning to sit down and compare yourselves to others and see how well or how poorly you're doing. In fact, that isn't what we're here to do, and it's not what I'm going to do to you now. I'm not going to compare you to the group of Christians here in Acts chapter 2, or to Christians today and see how well Calvary is doing versus most of American Christians based on the most recent polling or data. I'm going to show you how this has been done, and how the fact that this has been done is transformative to you. Because yes, in a sinful world, it is scary and dangerous to dream this dream, to sell your stuff and give to people who have need, because they might rip you off and it might not go well. You might find yourself in a position where you didn't get to receive the goodness of the dream because the world is broken. And that will be unfair to you. That will hurt. That will be something quite unpleasant. But you know who experienced that kind of unfairness? Jesus. Jesus came and lived this dream. He shared openly and honestly with everyone who was around him. He was the embodiment of this dream, God's way of coming and giving everything to everyone who needed it. Because we did not have righteousness, and we did not have what it took to be people who could stand before God. We did not have the faith in this dream that it takes to live in paradise. We had spent all of our time, as we so often do, reaching and grabbing and trying to get a little bit more fruit for ourselves because we're afraid that if we don't reach for ourselves, we're not going to have anything. And so Jesus came and he gave openly. He gave everything openly. He bled openly for us. He gave us his breath. Just like the Father had in the Garden of Eden when he gave life to Adam, Jesus gave his breath to you. And it was not fair. Because the crazy thing was, the way Jesus lived, the way Jesus acted, he was the only human being in all of history who could have laid claim to whatever he wanted. He was the only one in all of history who could have said, you know what, independently I'm fine. I don't need to be all together with all of you. I don't need you to give me anything. And yet he came in and he became part of what we were doing because he dreams this dream and he believes in it because he yearns to be with you and with you, with him, see us all have everything in common. And he's still doing it. He's still constantly here for you, providing for you, listening to you and your prayers, responding to you, building you together into a community of people who, because of him and his message, despite your dissimilarities, despite your differences, can have everything in common. And he has been so gracious to you here in Bellevue by putting you in one of the most diverse places around, where you can really see this dream happen because people are so different from each other. And he calls you and he beckons you. He paints the picture for you and he says, come and dream with me. Let this be one of those moments where the dream comes true a little bit and we all become a little bit more excited about when it will be completely, fully, and totally true. Read this poem with me one more time. All dreams begin as dreams because that's where you can see them. But dreams come true are different because there you have to be them. Still, in some fleeting moments, the two can coexist. The dream unchanged can come to life, and the good that could be is. My friends, believe with me in dreams that do come true, and seek to see them in the midst of God and me and you. Amen. Please stand.